Funding for this program is provided by Annenberg CPD to advance excellent teaching.
Is it possible to relive an operation in your subconscious? Just try to keep it as long as you can. Can your mind shut out the pain of extreme cold?
Fixate.
How does the right eye trick the left hand? The mind, hidden and divided, this time on Discovering Psychology. Consider an ordinary operation under anesthesia. The patient is unconscious. All indicators are normal. But then the surgeon finds a growth that could be malignant. He says out loud that the patient may have cancer. Fortunately, it's a false alarm. The growth is benign. The operation is successful, and the prognosis is excellent. The patient should feel fine in a few days, but for some reason, she doesn't. The patient became listless and moody after the operation. No one could understand why, least of all her. Finally, as her depression deepened, she sought help from a therapist who decided to use hypnosis to explore the cause of her problem. As the patient relived the operation in her mind, the truth came out. Even though she had been unconscious, she had heard the surgeon say that she might have cancer. This news was so traumatic that it plunged her into depression, even though it turned out to be false. The surgeon's comment had been buried in her subconscious mind, normally unavailable to her conscious awareness, unless retrieved by special methods, such as hypnosis. In experiments following this case, both negative and positive messages were given by anesthesiologists to different surgery patients while they were under anesthesia. None of the patients reported any awareness of what happened during the operation. However, under hypnosis, some of those exposed to negative messages gave an almost verbatim account of the anesthesiologist's comments, while others showed extreme anxiety. Another group of patients who were exposed to positive comments during their operations needed smaller amounts of painkillers after surgery and were discharged earlier than those in groups who heard only silence or music during their operations. We should note, however, that subconscious processing during anesthesia is complex and difficult to demonstrate reliably. This phenomenon of subconscious awareness raises some profound questions about the nature of the human mind and how it functions to tune us into or out of the world around us. Can events and experiences taking place below the level of consciousness really alter our moods, bias our actions, and even change our health? And why are we unaware of what this hidden consciousness knows? In Western civilization, it has been traditionally held that reason, free choice, and carefully weighed decisions guide our actions. We assume that we have ready access to our most significant thoughts, feelings, and memories, that it is truly possible to know thyself. At the same time, the brain has been seen as a monolithic command center that can know everything because it is master of all it surveys. But recent experiments in neuroscience suggest an alternative conception. It seems that our brains are organized into many separate mini-brains, or cognitive modules. Each of these is designed to do a specific job, such as speaking, or reading, or drawing. Moreover, our minds are devoted to concealing some truths we would rather not face, either unpleasant memories or even current experiences. And so, to know thyself one needs to explore the murky realm of the unconscious and the subconscious, where consciousness can take on various disguises. Throughout history, people have been fascinated and frightened by the idea of a sudden transformation of identity, from our conscious selves to something beyond our control, as shown here in an early film version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We see this notion in tales of witches' potions and voodoo possession, in stories of the devil who takes over and directs the souls of his victims. And we see it in the carvings of the Northwest Indians, which represent animals who have turned into humans. And although we know of no confirmed sightings of animal humans or witches or devils, we do know that certain chemical substances can dramatically change how the mind functions and even how personality is expressed. Our consciousness can be profoundly altered by psychoactive drugs called hallucinogens, most notably LSD, psilocybin, and mescaline, and more commonly, marijuana. A survey of nearly 500 societies around the world reveals that 90% of them practice some culturally patterned form of consciousness alteration, sometimes with the assistance of drugs, and sometimes by meditation or fasting. Experiencing traumatic events, even those deep in one's past, can also alter consciousness. At the University of Pittsburgh, psychologist Jonathan Schooler looks at the controversial phenomenon of recovered or discovered memory.
Recovered memories are situations in which individuals believe they have remembered long-forgotten incidences of abuse. Many researchers in the field believe that these recovered memories are largely the product of therapist suggestion, that is, that they actually didn't happen. Others believe that these are generally true and are actually the product of long-forgotten, repressed memories. What I've been doing is to investigate these cases. Jonathan Schooler, it's nice to see you. Good to meet you. And try to find evidence that sometimes, at least, these memories can correspond to actual incidents of abuse.
Schooler's research led him to the case of J.R., whose recollection of having been molested as a child didn't surface until he was an adult. Schooler was interested not only in how memory finally emerged, but in determining if it was true.
We went to a movie called Nuts with Barbra Streisand. Picked it, fairly randomly, fairly much on the spur of the moment. Didn't have any clue what it was about. During the course of the movie, it becomes clear that this female character was abused as a kid. And afterwards, we went out to dinner, and I felt very sort of agitated, kind of distracted that night. We lay down in bed, and Laura knew something was up. And that's when the first memory came to me. And I turned to her at one point and said, what happened to that little girl happened to me.
One of the most important aspects in determining the credibility of a discovered memory is to obtain